The language of compromise. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Dr. Maya Chen entered. Standing only 5'4", the human diplomat seemed almost fragile compared to the 12-foot crystalline forms of the Viridian representatives. Maya took a deep breath, straightening her diplomatic uniform and reminding herself why Earth had chosen her for this impossible task. The Viridians had appeared in Earth's orbit 6 months ago, their massive ships causing global panic until they established communication. They were a technological marvel, a species that had mastered faster-than-light travel, gravity manipulation, and energy production that made Earth's nuclear plants look like Stone Age fire pits. But for all their advancement, they lacked something fundamental. They had no concept of diplomacy. Distinguished representatives of Viridia, Maya began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I thank you for this opportunity, To. State your purpose, interrupted the lead Viridian, its crystalline structure pulsing with blue light. Our evaluation of human civilization indicates technological inferiority. Explain your presence in these proceedings. This wasn't going well already. Maya had spent months studying the fragmented information Earth had gathered about the Viridians. They were a hive-minded species organized in rigid hierarchies. They understood power, dominance, and submission, but not negotiation or compromise. I am here because differences in technological advancement don't determine the value of ideas. Maya replied carefully. Humans have developed systems of interaction that might benefit our relationship. The Viridian Council's crystals flashed with patterns of light, their form of communication with each other. Maya had learned to recognize confusion, dismissal, and occasionally, interest. Today, she saw mostly dismissal. Your species has experienced 142 major conflicts in its recorded history, stated another Viridian. Our civilization has experienced none. Your proposal is illogical. Maya nodded. That's precisely why I'm here. Humans have learned from our conflicts. We've developed systems to prevent them. Diplomacy, negotiation, mutual compromise. Compromise is inefficient, the lead Viridian stated flatly. Optimal solutions can be calculated. Deviations from optimality are errors. This fundamental difference had brought humanity to the brink of disaster. 3 weeks ago, a Viridian mining ship had entered the atmosphere over Australia without warning, intending to extract rare minerals. When politely asked to depart and discuss mining rights, the Viridians have been genuinely confused. In their hierarchical worldview, if they possessed superior technology, they had the right to take resources. The concept of sovereignty was foreign to them. Only a hastily arranged conference call between Earth's leaders and the Viridian command structure had prevented a military response that would have been catastrophic for humanity. Now Maya had been sent to prevent the next misunderstanding from becoming humanity's last. With respect, Maya continued, there's evidence that your approach is already failing. 17 other species have broken contact with Viridia in the past cycle. 3 systems have established defensive parameters against your ships. Your inability to negotiate is isolating your civilization at a time when galactic cooperation is increasing. The chamber resonated with a low hum as the Viridians communicated rapidly. Maya had struck a nerve. The Viridians had indeed been experiencing increasing resistance from other species, something their rigid hierarchical thinking couldn't explain. We acknowledge anomalies in interspecies relations, the lead Viridian admitted reluctantly. Your perspective may contain relevant variables. Proceed. Maya suppressed a smile. This small opening was all she needed. I propose a cultural exchange. Allow me to demonstrate human diplomatic principles by addressing a current dispute within your domain. The Viridian Council's lights flickered rapidly. Surprise, Maya recognized. They hadn't expected her to know about their internal problems. The Proxima Centauri mining dispute, Maya continued confidently. 2 Viridian factions claim priority. Your traditional approach would assign resources based on hierarchical status, correct? But this has resulted in work stoppage for 60 days. I propose a different solution. The Viridian's crystalline forms vibrated with what Maya had come to recognize as intense interest. Their internal dispute had indeed caused significant production delays, something their efficiency-minded culture found deeply troubling. "Your proposal will be evaluated," the lead Viridian stated. Maya spent the next 3 hours outlining a resource-sharing agreement between the Viridian factions, introducing concepts like mutual benefit, graduated access rights, and most revolutionary for the Viridians, the idea that both sides could gain more through cooperation than through dominance. When she finished, the council chamber was silent, the Viridians' lights pulsing slowly as they processed her ideas. Finally, the lead Viridian spoke. "Your approach contains unexpected efficiencies. The projected outcome exceeds our calculated optimal solution by 23.7%. Maya allowed herself a small smile. That's the power of diplomacy. When we move beyond simple hierarchies and find solutions that benefit all parties, we discover possibilities that rigid thinking cannot reveal. The Viridian Council withdrew to consider her proposal. Maya returned to her quarters on the massive Viridian station, exhausted but hopeful. The communications panel in her room flickered to life, displaying the face of Admiral Cheng, her contact on Earth. "Progress report, Dr. Chen." "They're listening, Admiral. It's a start. A start may not be enough. The Security Council is receiving reports of Viridian survey ships entering the Martian orbit, without established diplomatic protocols." "I know the stakes," Maya interrupted. "Give me time. They're logical beings. If I can demonstrate that diplomacy is more efficient than dominance, they'll adapt." "You have 1 week before the UN votes on defensive measures," the Admiral replied grimly. "If those measures are enacted, they'll interpret it as aggression, I know." Maya rubbed her temples. 1 week is all I need." The call ended, leaving Maya alone with the weight of her responsibility. Outside her viewport, the vast expanse of the Viridian station stretched for kilometers, housing millions of the crystalline beings. Their technological superiority over Earth was absolute. If diplomacy failed, humanity wouldn't stand a chance. The next morning, Maya was summoned back to the council chamber. To her surprise, she found not just the High Council but representatives from the 2 mining factions present as well. "We have implemented your proposal," the lead Viridian announced. "Efficiency has increased by 19.2%, within acceptable parameters of your projection." Maya nodded, careful not to appear too pleased. "I'm glad it's proving beneficial. However," continued the Viridian, "we require further instruction. Your method contained variables we cannot quantify. You referred to fairness and goodwill when structuring the agreement. These concepts have no measurable parameters in our systems." This was the opening Maya had hoped for. "These concepts are essential to sustainable diplomacy. Perhaps I could demonstrate through practical application." "Proceed." Maya spent the next 3 days working with the Viridians, introducing concepts that seemed obvious to humans, but were revolutionary to them. That the perceptions and emotions of other parties had real value in negotiations, that long-term relationships could be more valuable than short-term gains, that different perspectives could lead to innovation rather than just inefficiency. The Viridians struggled with these concepts, their rigid logical structures resistant to such fluid thinking. But they were nothing if not determined learners. On the 4th day, a crisis erupted. A Viridian exploration vessel had suffered catastrophic failure near a planet occupied by the Trilari, a species known for their territorial defensiveness. The Trilari had interpreted the disabled vessel's drift toward their planet as an invasion attempt and were preparing a military response. The Viridian High Council convened an emergency session, with Maya present as an observer. Their traditional response would have been a show of overwhelming force to establish dominance, potentially triggering an interstellar conflict. "The Trilari must be subdued," stated one council member. "Their aggression against our disabled vessel is unacceptable. Calculations indicate a 97.3% probability of successful military resolution," agreed another. Maya stood, though she had not been invited to speak. Distinguished Council, may I suggest an alternative approach? The lead Viridian's crystals flashed with reluctant acknowledgement. The human may present. Instead of demonstrating military superiority, demonstrate diplomatic wisdom, Maya suggested. Acknowledge the Triluri's territorial concerns. Explain the vessel's failure. Invite them to observe your rescue operations. Turn this potential conflict into an opportunity for building trust. Trust is inefficient, objected a council member. It requires vulnerability. Yet you've seen the efficiency gains from my previous diplomatic proposal, Maya countered. Sometimes what appears inefficient in the short term creates greater efficiency over time. The council's lights pulsed rapidly as they communicated among themselves. Finally, the lead Viridian turned to Maya. We will attempt your approach, but if the Triluri respond with aggression, we will revert to established protocols. Maya watched anxiously as the Viridians sent their message to the Triluri. Hours passed with no response. Then, just as tension was reaching its peak, the communications array activated. The Triluri commander appeared on screen, his feathered crest raised in what Maya recognized as cautious interest rather than the flat defensive posture of aggression. We accept your explanation, the Triluri stated. Your proposal for observed rescue operations is unexpected. We will permit 2 unarmed vessels to retrieve your people. The council chamber remained silent after the transmission ended. Then the lead Viridian turned to Maya, its crystalline structure pulsing with a pattern she had never seen before. Your method prevented conflict while achieving our objective. The Triluri have historically rejected all Viridian approaches. This result was unpredicted. Diplomacy often achieves what force cannot, Maya explained. By respecting their concerns and offering transparency, you gave them a way to cooperate without losing face. Losing face. The Viridians' confusion was evident. Appearing weak or foolish to others, Maya clarified. All sentient species care about how they're perceived, even when it's not logical. The concept seemed to intrigue the council. Over the following days, Maya found herself invited to observe more Viridian interactions with other species. Each time, she offered diplomatic alternatives to their traditional dominance-based approaches. And each time, the results surprised the Viridians with their effectiveness. Word of her work spread throughout the massive Viridian fleet. More and more of their leaders sought her counsel, eager to understand this strange human concept that seemed to defy logical expectations yet produced superior results. By the end of her assigned week, Maya received another call from Admiral Cheng. The Viridian ships have withdrawn from Martian orbit, he reported, his face showing rare amazement. What did you do? Maya smiled. I taught them something we've known since we first gathered around fires in caves. Sometimes talking works better than fighting. The Security Council is impressed. They've authorized an extended diplomatic mission. You'll have all the resources you need. Good, Maya replied, because we're just getting started. The Viridians have invited representatives from 7 other species to a diplomatic conference. They're calling it the Human Approach Forum. As Maya ended the call, she looked out at the stars visible from her viewport. For the first time since the Viridians had appeared in Earth's sky, she felt genuine hope. Humanity might lack the Viridians' technological prowess, but they possessed something perhaps even more valuable, millennia of learning how different minds could find common ground. The lessons had just begun. The Galactic Concord. 6 months into her diplomatic mission, Maya stood before a gathering unprecedented in galactic history. Representatives from 23 spacefaring civilizations filled the massive chamber aboard the Viridian capital ship, Logical Harmony, a vessel whose very name reflected the changes Maya had helped initiate. The simulation will begin, announced First Arbiter Crystallis, once the most rigid of the Viridian High Council, now the galaxy's most enthusiastic proponent of human diplomatic methods. Holographic projections filled the chamber's center, displaying a complex scenario Maya had designed, a resource-scarce solar system with 3 inhabited planets, each with different needs and capabilities. The assembled representatives were divided into teams, tasked with resolving the crisis through diplomatic means rather than the military solutions that had been the galactic standard. Maya watched with quiet pride as the alien diplomats engaged in the simulation, applying principles that humans had developed through centuries of difficult lessons: compromise, perspective-taking, mutual benefit analysis, and creative problem-solving. Even more remarkably, the Viridians themselves were serving as facilitators, their crystalline forms glowing with previously unseen patterns indicating enthusiasm and engagement. "Your species has transformed them," observed Ambassador Tileri of the Avian Solari Confederacy, who had approached Maya quietly. "The Viridians were once feared throughout known space. Now they mediate disputes they would previously have resolved with calculated demonstrations of power." Maya nodded. They discovered that diplomacy is simply more efficient. For a logic-driven species, that was a compelling revelation. And yet, Tileri's feathered crest rippled thoughtfully. "Logical efficiency doesn't explain their current behavior. Observe Arbiter Crystallis." Maya turned to watch the Viridian facilitator, noticing something she'd been too busy to fully appreciate. Crystallis wasn't simply applying diplomatic principles mechanically. The Viridian was showing genuine engagement with the emotional responses of the other species, adjusting approaches based on subtle signs of distress or satisfaction. "They're developing empathy," Maya realized aloud. Not just understanding emotions as variables, but actually beginning to experience resonance with others' feelings. "A remarkable evolution," Tileri agreed. "One that may yet save this galaxy." The ambassador's words weren't mere hyperbole. 3 weeks earlier, long-range Viridian sensors had detected a phenomenon approaching from the galactic rim, a massive energy distortion that consumed all matter in its path. Analysis suggested it would reach populated systems within 2 years. Traditional Viridian response would have been to calculate survival probabilities and allocate resources to save their own civilization, while leaving others to their fate. Instead, they had convened this unprecedented gathering, sharing all data and proposing a coordinated response. Maya's diplomatic training was being applied on a scale she had never imagined. The simulation concluded, with the teams finding a surprisingly effective solution involving shared technology, coordinated resource extraction, and mutual defense protocols. As the participants discussed their experience, Maya felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. "A moment, teacher," Crystallis requested. Using the honorific the Viridians had begun applying to Maya. She followed the Viridian to a private chamber where a secure communication link had been established. On the screen was Admiral Cheng, his expression grave. "Dr. Chen, the anomaly has accelerated. New calculations put it reaching populated systems in 8 months, not 2 years." Maya felt her heart sink. "That changes everything. The cooperative initiatives we've been developing will need to be implemented immediately," Crystallis interrupted, crystalline structure pulsing with determination. "This is why diplomacy must be paired with decisive action, as you taught us." Maya looked between the human admiral and the Viridian arbiter, struck by how natural their cooperation now seemed. 6 months ago, these two species had been on the brink of conflict. Now they were planning the salvation of the galaxy together. "We'll need to reconvene the delegates immediately," Maya decided. "Present the new data. Accelerate the implementation timeline." "Already arranged," Crystallis confirmed. "And I have taken the liberty of preparing resource allocation proposals based on your previous guidance on equitable distribution during crisis." Within hours, the chamber was filled again, the mood notably more somber as the new projections were shared. Maya watched anxiously as the delegates processed the information, fearing that the fragile diplomatic framework they'd built might collapse under the pressure of existential threat. The Moriji delegate, representing a species known for isolationism, was the first to speak. "In the face of such acceleration, logic dictates we withdraw to protect our own systems with whatever means we possess." Maya's heart sank, but before she could respond, something unexpected happened. "That approach ensures maximum casualties," Crystallis stated, addressing the Moriji directly. Ambassador, I understand your responsibility to your people. I feel similar responsibility to mine. But Teacher Chen has shown us that sometimes our intuitive responses, while seemingly protective, lead to worse outcomes. The Viridian moved to the center of the chamber, crystalline form glowing with intensity. Before we learned diplomacy, we would have calculated survival probabilities and acted to maximize our own. We now understand this approach to be not just morally flawed but mathematically inferior. One by one, Crystallis called on delegates from species that had historically been enemies, highlighting complementary technologies, strategic positions, and unique capabilities that, when combined, created possibilities none had seen individually. The human concept of synergy, Crystallis explained, where the whole exceeds the sum of its parts, applies not just to negotiations, but to civilizational survival. Together, our chances increase by a factor of 12 compared to individual efforts. Maya watched in amazement as the Viridian applied every principle she had taught, but taken to levels she hadn't imagined possible. Crystallis wasn't just reciting diplomatic methods. The Viridian was innovating, adapting the principles to this unprecedented crisis. The delegates began to engage, moving from fear-driven withdrawal to collaborative problem-solving. Species that had never shared technology began discussing integrated defense systems. Ancient enemies considered coordinated evacuation plans for endangered systems. Within hours, a framework for a unified response was taking shape, something that would have been unthinkable before Maya's diplomatic mission began. During a brief recess, Maya found Crystallis alone, the Viridian's crystalline structure pulsing with a pattern she now recognized as intense contemplation. "You've exceeded all my expectations," Maya told the Viridian honestly. "What you're accomplishing here, it's beyond anything I taught you." Crystallis's form shifted, displaying the pattern Maya had come to recognize as their version of a smile. "You taught us the principles, teacher. But you also taught us something more important, that principles must evolve through application. That is the true essence of diplomacy, is it not? Not rigid rules, but adaptive understanding." Maya nodded, deeply moved. "That's exactly right. There is something I wish to show you," Crystallis continued, leading Maya to a viewport overlooking the massive Viridian fleet. "We have repurposed our military vessels. Observe." Maya watched as the enormous ships began a precisely choreographed movement, forming a massive three-dimensional pattern in space. As they moved, energy fields activated between them, linking each vessel to the others in a complex web. "What am I seeing?" Maya asked. "The first implementation of the Galactic Concord Defense Network," Crystallis explained. "Each ship now serves as both a defensive unit and a connection point for a galaxy-wide energy dissipation system. When the anomaly reaches our perimeter, its energy will be captured, channeled, and redistributed harmlessly." This was part of the Zilbrani proposal, Maya realized, remembering the insectoid species whose understanding of energy dynamics had been largely ignored before the diplomatic conference. Combined with Morigi field technology and our own power distribution systems, Crystallis confirmed, 3 species that never shared knowledge before your arrival. The simulations indicate a 72% probability of success, far higher than any single approach could achieve. As they spoke, more ships were arriving, vessels from other species joining the Viridian fleet, taking up positions in the carefully calculated pattern. Former enemies were now literally linking their defensive systems together, creating something greater than any could have built alone. "We're actually going to survive this," Maya whispered, the reality of what was happening finally sinking in. "More than survive, teacher. Transform." Crystallis gestured toward the chamber where the delegates were reconvening. "The protocols being established today will outlast this crisis. The Galactic Concord being formed is not merely a defensive alliance, but a new approach to civilization itself." Maya returned to the chamber with Crystallis, where the delegates had indeed moved beyond crisis response to discussing permanent cooperative structures. Species that had been isolated or in conflict for millennia were now designing shared research initiatives, cultural exchange programs, and mutual aid protocols. As the session concluded, T. Larry approached Maya again, the avian ambassador's crest displaying colors Maya had learned indicated profound emotion. When your small ship first approached our outpost 6 months ago, requesting to observe our delegation to the Viridians, I thought you were either naive or suicidal, T. Larry admitted. The galaxy had accepted that conflict and domination were inevitable aspects of interspecies relations. The ambassador gestured to the chamber, where delegates who would once have never acknowledged each other's existence were now engaged in animated conversation, sharing ideas and making plans for cooperation that extended centuries into the future. You have given us something we did not know we lacked, T. Larry continued. Not just tools for avoiding conflict, but a vision of what we might become together. Maya shook her head modestly. I just shared what humanity learned through our own difficult history. You all did the hard work of applying it. Nevertheless, T. Larry insisted, future historians will record that the Great Transformation began with one human teacher who believed diplomacy could work even across the vast differences between stars. 8 months later, the energy anomaly reached the perimeter of populated space, where the combined fleets of 23 civilizations waited in their carefully orchestrated formation. The Galactic Concord Defense Network activated as planned, capturing and redirecting the destructive energy. The dissipation wasn't perfect. 3 systems had to be evacuated, and several defense ships were lost. But the galaxy as a whole survived intact. Maya watched the final reports from the observation deck of the Harmony, a new vessel built specifically for the diplomatic corps that had grown from her initial mission. Beside her stood Crystallis and representatives from 12 other species, all now part of the permanent Galactic Concord Council. The danger has passed, Crystallis announced, and the Concord holds. What happens now? Asked the Morigi delegate, who had transformed from skeptic to supporter over the intense months of preparation. Maya smiled. Now the real work begins. Building something lasting is always harder than responding to a crisis. But I think we've proven what's possible when we choose diplomacy over dominance. As the representatives dispersed to communicate with their homeworlds, Crystallis remained with Maya at the viewport, the Viridian's crystalline form glowing with a pattern Maya had come to recognize as profound satisfaction. You have changed the fate of an entire galaxy, teacher, Crystallis observed quietly. Maya watched the stars, thinking of Earth, a small planet whose history of conflict had forged the very diplomatic principles that had just saved countless civilizations. No, she replied. We all did. That's the most important lesson of diplomacy. No one does anything alone. As the Harmony moved through space, carrying the architects of the new Galactic Concord to their next meeting, Maya reflected on her journey. She had come to teach diplomacy to aliens, and had ended up helping transform the galaxy itself, not through technological superiority or military might, but through humanity's hard-won understanding that talking, listening, and finding common ground could accomplish what force never could. It was, perhaps, humanity's greatest gift to the stars.